Welcome back everybody to my latest Q&A. Now before I get to the questions, a couple of quick announcements. First up, the Freakin' Store has officially relaunched. And on the Freakin' Store, we've got merch. We got Freakin' Reviews shirts. We got Freakin' Reviews hats. We got Freakin' Reviews aprons, and even Freakin' Reviews laser etched tumblers from Patriot Coolers. We even have digital gift cards just in time for the holidays. And on the other side of the store, we've got some Amazon finds, which is a curated list by me of products I reviewed, tested, and I do recommend. So check out the Freakin' Store today. How's that for my sales pitch? In addition to my store, I also have channel memberships in which I create extra content for those who want to support the channel. I also give away memberships during the premiere of every one of my Q&As. So with that, let's get right to the first question. Daniel Donnelly 5824 asks, what's the oldest product you have that still works perfectly? In terms of products that I reviewed, the very first product I reviewed, which is a handy heater, still works. Today I'm reviewing a product by the name of Handy Heater. I probably pull it out about once a year, just more for old time nostalgia sake at this point. But it still works, believe it or not. I wasn't really overly impressed by it. I think a lot of the advertising claims of that one are kind of overhyped. But to its credit, 8 years after reviewing it, it still works. JEditor9687 asks, are there any products you got rid of that you wish you had kept? That usually only happens if I'm reviewing something later on that's kind of similar to something I got rid of, and I think I wish I'd kept that. I've given away a lot of the big countertop appliances because I've reviewed so many over the years, I have no room for them. But there have been occasions I got rid of some of those and I thought maybe I shouldn't have got rid of that one. But I'm just so overwhelmed with stuff here, I have to get rid of some stuff. And in some cases, I regret it. But the way I see it is I'd probably rather regret giving away something than just living in clutter all the time. This person asks, my husband and I are thinking of moving to Vegas. Any tips on good areas to live or to avoid? Or just tips on house hunting there in general? Now you're gonna get different opinions on this one depending on who you ask. I've lived all over Vegas. Sunrise Mountain, Centennial Hills, off Tropicana, Silverado Ranch, and Henderson. Now if you think of Vegas as a big square, which it's not, but if you think of it that way and you go all along the west side and down to the south side and kind of over, that's where I would look. I'd kind of avoid the other half of that square. I would also not personally live anywhere near the strip. Mike asks, is the Boneyard a physical place or just code for in the trash or donated to someone? The Boneyard is my fancy name for a bunch of containers in my garage. That's where a lot of the stuff ends up. And even though I call it the Boneyard, sometimes I end up going and fishing stuff out of there and using it. So it's not necessarily a final resting place for everything, but it does end up being a final resting place for a lot of things. Now, even though the Boneyard kind of has a bad connotation to it, to me, that's not as bad as the things I give away, because that means I'm never gonna use them again. Boneyard, sometimes I pull them out of there. Glamorous Frog asks, if you had 24 hours to go back in time and experience something, what would it be? To me, that's an easy one. I'd go back to 1920s Hollywood, that's right. That's an era I've been obsessed with since I was a little kid. So back in the day, they used to actually show old comedies on Saturday mornings alongside children's cartoons and things. So you see like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Laurel and Hardy. So I grew up watching those old comedies, and over the years I just became kind of just obsessed with it. I've read biographies, I've watched endless documentaries. That just seems like an amazing era. Unfortunately, it ended in 1929 when the Depression started. But up until that point, 1920s Hollywood is something that I am absolutely obsessed with. I also enjoy watching a bunch of old films from back then, like documentaries that have been AI enhanced, upscaled, and colorized, because it kind of brings it to life. That's just an area I would love to go back and visit. This person says, name your top 5 bass guitarists. How do I stick to just 5, right? Now, I should point out that favorite isn't always best, so that's something to consider, but one of my favorites has always been Geezer Butler. A lot of musicians I play with said that my style is close to Geezer's, probably because he was one of my biggest influences when I first started playing. Other ones would be Geddy Lee from Rush, John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, who's underrated by the way. Justin Chancellor from Tool, not only is a great bass player, but his bass tone is awesome. And to me, I think the greatest bass player of all time is Stanley Clarke. But there's so many I could mention that weren't on that list. John Entwistle, Chris Squire, Victor Wooten, even Randy Jackson, Jaco Pastorius, Ron Carter, the list just goes on and on. There's just too many great bass players out there to limit myself to 5. Got some questions from channel members. First up, Andy Bernard, who's one of my longest channel members, says the top 3 to 5 famous people you've met either on accident or on purpose. I've met my share of famous people like most people have. I would say that the 3 funny stories are, first up, I was at the Vegas Rocks Music Awards, I think in 2010. And I snuck backstage and I was using one of the backstage bathrooms because I wasn't allowed back there. I was waiting in the bathroom for my turn, and the guy using the bathroom in front of me turns around. It's Otis Day from Animal House. I don't think I said Otis my man like the movie, but I was tempted to, but he was really nice. Number 2, when I was living in California, my neighbor and I, we used to play basketball all the time. And he always had different family members come down there.
And for a couple times I played with him and this little kid. I was a nephew or a cousin. That kid ended up being Tony Gonzalez, one of the greatest tight ends of all time. So I guess I met him before he was famous. And number 3, one time I was down on the strip. I think I was dropping someone off at their hotel. After my friend got out of the car, I look over and I say, hey, that's Macho Camacho, the boxer over there. And Macho Camacho looked over and saw me pointing at him. So he comes over and jumps in the back seat of my car. He's like, hey, what's going on, guys? That wasn't expected. It was kind of cool. I wasn't really a huge fan of Macho Camacho, but I liked him after that. Member C3 Poe asks, what kind of ASCII on TV product do you think is most useful? I would say of the ones that I use the most, the flashlights are usually kind of hard to mess up. So those are pretty good. Some of the cleaners are actually not so bad either. And honestly, I think the Gotham Steel Pasta Pot, I still use like 7 years later. So, you know, ASCII on TV is hit or miss, but once in a while they actually get something that's pretty good. And a lot of times the good products are actually just taken from something else that's already out there. They just put an ASCII on TV logo on it. This member asks, would I consider doing a video for the best of the best or worst of the worst products I've ever reviewed on my channel? Now, right now I have a tentative plan to post that exact video on October 23rd, 2026. That's my tentative plan, because that's my 10-year anniversary of my first video on my channel. So I don't know if it's gonna happen or not, but right now, mark your calendar, pencil it in, because it's not definite, but October 23rd, 2026 should be that video. This member asked, would you ever review the Ninja Blast? I reviewed a couple of Ninja products lately, so I might want to give it a bit of a break. I probably should review that one, although I haven't really seen much about it. So I'll look into it and see what I can do.
Now the next set of questions comes from Dogs Gang, who asked me 20 questions. I felt obligated to answer a couple of them. I'll do those quickly. How do you deal with and process hateful or negative comments on YouTube? I delete hate, I ignore the rest. What do you enjoy doing aside from social media, such as hobbies, reading, writing, working out, etc.? Right now I have no life outside of YouTube and Bailey, and I hope to change that at some point. What are some of your favorite drinks, alcohol or non-alcohol? I mostly drink iced tea throughout the year every day, but I treat myself to about 1 Coke Zero and 1 coconut pineapple Zoa every day. Got a couple of similar questions here. This one says, when is your next Shark Tank product and or food reviews with your son? Someone else asks, how about some more reviews on Shark Tank products, food or otherwise? Well, I'm glad you asked that, because me and my son, who's visiting right now, just finished Shark Tank season 14, so that should be coming up very soon, so be on the lookout for that. Now that one ended up being kind of a long video, which isn't always a bad thing. So when you see it in your feed or a notification, grab some popcorn and enjoy the ride. Got a couple similar questions. One says, how old is Bailey? The other one says, how is Bailey? Bailey will be 10 years old in a few months, which is amazing and scary at the same time. But Bailey is an absolute joy in my life. She's my best friend. We're together all day long. You know, it's kind of funny, in recent years, Bailey started doing something that she didn't do when she was younger, and that is, she won't allow me to have a bad day. Like if she hears me even mumble something under my breath out of frustration, like say my editing software crashes or my computer crashes or something, if I just mumble something negative under my breath, she gets up and comes over to me and tries to cheer me up. I don't think there's been any person or any dog that could read me as well as Bailey does. She knows when I'm not having a good time, and she does her best to cheer me up. So she's an amazing addition to my life, and I hope I have many more years left with her. This person asks, have you ever traveled abroad? If so, where and what were your favorite destinations? So I've been to Australia, Mexico, and the Caribbean. I've not been to Europe yet, or Canada. My favorite places were probably the Gold Coast in Australia. I really liked that. I liked all the Caribbean, and even though it's technically part of the US, I really loved Puerto Rico. This person says, if you were to get a new breed of dog, what type would you get? If I had to pick another dog breed, I'd probably go with a collie. That's one I've always wanted. I've had friends with them. They always seem like great dogs. But it's, man, once you've had a golden retriever, it's kind of hard to go back. Shout out to Lord Tweetmouth, the person who developed the golden retriever, the first one being born in 1868. And I was born in 1968. Maybe there's a connection there. This person asks, ham and cheese sandwich or peanut butter and banana sandwich? That's an easy choice to me. Peanut butter and banana all the way. Peanut butter and anything, really. I remember once, probably around 2002, 2003, I had calculated that at that point, over a 5-year period, I probably had over 1,000 peanut butter sandwiches. I still eat them all the time. I never get sick of them, so easy choice, peanut butter and banana to me over ham and cheese. I got two kind of similar ones here. This one says, dinner party with your choice of 8 famous or influential guests, past or present, who do you invite and why? Another person says, if you could have dinner with any 3 historical figures, who would they be and what questions would you ask them? Let's start with the 8 first. I would probably have kind of groups of 2. I would have 2 scientists. I'd go with Einstein and Isaac Newton. I'd love to hear what those guys have to talk about. For music, I'd probably pick Paul McCartney and Maurice Ravel, who's my favorite composer. I don't know if they have anything in common, but I would love to talk to either one of those guys, although I don't think Ravel spoke English. I want a couple funny guys there, so I'd got to go with John Ritter and Groucho Marx, two guys whose sense of humor influenced me when I was young. Then I'd probably have a couple of like extras there, so who would I pick? Maybe George Carlin, just because he always had something interesting to say. Maybe Bon Scott from AC/DC, because he seemed like a really fun guy and he passed away too young. So now if I had to choose only 3 of those, it'd be John Ritter, Einstein, and Paul McCartney. What a trio, huh? This person says, maybe a little behind the scenes before and after shooting. How do you determine what to review, the setup, editing, any bloopers, and storing the items? As far as choosing what to review, usually it's something that's either going around on television or online. It's recommended a lot, it's weird, or it might be useful. Then I order it, and when it comes in, I unbox it sometimes a day, weeks to even months before I actually review it. I plan out my initial round of tests, I edit that, and then I try to decide what does this video need next. So I usually review at least over 2 days, because the first day I just kind of do my initial test, second day I try to round out the video to make it more interesting. So then I edit the video using Vegas Pro 17. I've not upgraded to newer versions because they don't work that well on my computer. After I post a video, I usually leave the products out for a while if I think there's any chance I'll use them. If I don't, I'll usually pack them up and put them out in the Boneyard. And if I really think there's no chance to ever use it again, I'll donate them or give them away. This person asked, my question is, what sort of effect, if there are any, you felt from having so many of your everyday possessions come essentially from curation? That is kind of weird. I mean, so much of what I use throughout the day are things that came from videos. Everything from my coffee pot to my toaster to my belt. It's like everything's a reminder of YouTube. It's really hard to get away from it. The other day we were going to steam some broccoli, and I ran out in the Boneyard and grabbed my broccoli steamer. I usually have a gadget for everything, but sometimes it's hard to find them because I have so many gadgets. But it is kind of weird. I think I kind of live in a little bit of an unusual kind of bubble that most people don't. Got a couple similar questions here. This one says, you should do a collab with TylerTube. Another person asked if I have any collaborations planned. Well, I've got to say, over the years, I've reached out to other YouTubers about collaborations, and usually they don't respond or they're not interested. So I've tried. I once reached out to TylerTube. I reached out to Crazy Russian Hacker. I've reached out to quite a few of them. Most of them either didn't respond at all or said they weren't interested. So I'll keep trying, but it seems like nobody wants to do a collab with me. If I'm not mistaken, Barry Lewis said he would be interested, and I love his channel. You should definitely check that out if you haven't already. But unfortunately, he's a 10-hour flight away. Heartquaked asked, when filming your reviews, do you have a multi-camera setup, or do you do every take and close-up with one camera? I'll show you my camera setup here. I usually use 3 cameras, sometimes 4. I kind of have a pecking order here. The one I'm talking into right now is a Sony a7S III. On that is a G Master 24mm 1.4 lens. And on top of that is a Pico mic. And right now I have a Peter McKinnon ND filter on there. That's the camera I always film my face with. Now camera number 2 is usually aimed at my hands. And this is a Sony a6400 with a Sigma 16mm 1.4 lens. That one's almost always pointed downward when I'm doing stuff with my hands. Camera number 3, which is usually when I'm out and about or filming handheld close-ups, that's a Sony ZV-1. Although sometimes instead of using that, I use my iPhone. One of the reasons I use a Sony a7S III is because it's such a good camera. I feel like it kind of compensates for my lack of skills in that area. This person says, show us your head shaving regimen. I don't think I'm gonna film myself in the shower, but it's quite simple. I lather my head up with shaving cream, and I take my razor, which is a Gillette Fusion 5. I go from the front to halfway through the back, and I always follow with my left hand to see if I miss any spots. So it looks like this. Then I go up and over the ears, up over the ears, and then I do the back. Follow with my fingers. Takes me less than 2 minutes. I used to do it over the sink, but that's a big mess. I eventually realized that doing it in the shower is a lot faster and a lot less messy. This person asks, what product is giving you the most back pain relief? Because I have complained about back problems over the years here. I have a good friend who's a chiropractor, and he gave me some stretches to do when my back's bothering me, or even when it's not. So I found that doing stretches, either when I'm having back pains or to prevent them, that seems to be the most effective thing. On top of that, if you add heat patches, IB, and honestly, a product I bought many years ago before my YouTube channel, it's called Low Back Tracks. It looks like a bicycle handlebar. That also helps a little bit with decompression, but sometimes you just gotta wait it out. Well, that's it as far as this Q&A goes. Thank you to those who submitted questions. If I didn't get to yours, hopefully I'll get to them next time. Don't forget to check out the Freakin' Store for your Freakin' Reviews merch and channel memberships if you want to deep dive into further content. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time. Glamour. Bailey, you good girl. What a good dog. Give me a kiss. Kiss. Good girl.